My passage is written by Alice Munro, who is a short story writer from Canada and has been writing since the 1960s. It is Passion, which was released in the Runaway collection in 2004, and for a majority of the story it is based in 1950s to 1960s. However, at the beginning of the story, it begins with Grace, the main character, revisiting her past and trying to revisit the Travis's house, which she spent a majority of her time while dating the character Murray. This passage is significant as it further develops the character of Grace as well as the relationship between Grace and Murray, while heavily foreshadowing to the future events of Grace and Murray's split as well as the events occurring between her and Neil and Neil's future death. Now I'll be going through the passage sequentially. It immediately begins with, he would see her, and having seen her he would fall in love. This implies imagery of classical expectations taught to women of men, of Prince Charming. It shows how innocent Grace's idea of falling in love and relationships are, as no matter how much she hates cliches, which is expressed in the beginning of the short story, she still abides by them to an extent due to the expectations taught to her. However, she then deviates from this in the final line, saying pleasurable physical intimacies followed. Now, this shows her own desires and passions which deviate from these expectations, as said before. It exaggerates her dissatisfaction with Murray as he is not providing these physical intimacies. But once again, deviates from the original gender roles as a woman of that time period were not supposed to be as open with their sexuality. It then goes on to say in the next paragraph, he felt that it was his responsibility to protect her. This introduces male roles as a dominant figure, which Murray is slightly lacking as he's not taking control as an assertive figure, but it introduces a dominant figure giving responsibility to the male to protect their woman, further showing gender roles within the text. But then it continues, and the ease with which she offered herself threw him off. This once again shows how her desires and passions deviate from the gender roles of that time, as her preconceptions of her are almost distorted when she gives herself so easily, as it reinforces the idea that women are pure and innocent. This is then developed further in another line saying, and that it did not fit in at all with his notions of her. So his preconceptions of her due to the gender role expectations making women believed to be pure and innocent beings, and they aren't supposed to have these sexual desires. However, as the text describes, Grace is different from this, or expresses it more openly. In the last line, it says, she felt that it was up to Murray to take over, which he would not do. This foreshadows and further characterizes Murray, as it describes how bland and lack of control he has over her, diminishing his dominant figure towards her, while implying that a future character, Neil, will then finally take control of her and slightly satisfy her passions. In the next paragraph, it says these sieges left them both disturbed and slightly angry or ashamed. The specific language of siege provides imagery for a battle, subconsciously supporting Murray and Grace's slight external conflict due to their personality and passionate differences, which further foreshadows or alludes to their future breakup. At the end of the same paragraph, it says, rearranging his impressions of her, of his Grace, so that he would stay wholeheartedly in love with her. This further supports the idea that women needed to stay pure and innocent, as after these sieges of frustration due to her sexual desires, he was forced to rearrange his impressions of her, as it is clear from most of the short story that he is more passionate about marriage, and he is expecting this pure and innocent girl. So to stay wholeheartedly in love with her, he must rearrange his ideas and rearrange his feelings towards her, due to the 1950s, where it was not normal or respectful for a girl to give herself easily. Then it goes on as the narrator discusses how she may not work in the Christmas season because her job might be on. At the end of that paragraph, it says, Grace wrote to her aunt and uncle as if the Christmas season were a certainty, and they should not expect her back anytime soon. This reveals an absent relationship with her own family, the people that raised her, due to her parents being dying at an early age. This emphasizes the relationship Grace has with the Travers, as she spends as much time as she can with them, even if Murray's not there, diminishing the relationship she has with Murray, while intensifying the relationship she has with the Travers, as well as showing her independency due to her absent relationship with her original family. The narrator then continues, why did she do this? It is not as if she had other plans. The narrator mirrors Grace's confusion through a set of questions, which reveals certain characteristics about Grace and her indecisiveness or uncertainty on the situation she's facing, allowing for the readers to engage in her mindset, providing a limited view, but also furthering an understanding of her character and what she wants in life, and how in this point in time she's uncertain of which path to take. In the final paragraph, Mrs. Travers begins to directly characterize Murray as a sterling and uncomplicated man. Now, the specific language of uncomplicated alludes to simple or boring, which depicts a contrast to Grace's personality and desires, showing how there may be a change in the future, or how she may want someone more entertaining. This then continues with, not like his brother, Neil is very bright. I don't mean that Murray isn't. You certainly don't get to be an engineer without a brain or two in your head, but Neil is. He's deep. Now, Mrs. Travers almost has a slip of the tongue as she interrupts herself, correcting saying whether or not Murray's bright, seeming that she wants Murray to appear as interesting as possible, fulfilling the ideas of having a stable or sustainable relationship during this day and time. As previously mentioned in the short story, Mrs. Travers had a first husband who ended up committing suicide, which can cause her emotional fits even years later with her new husband, who is much more stable and sustainable like Murray. Now, this implies the idea that Grace should go after a more stable and sustainable option rather than Murray, who is deep, wrapped in mystery. This then continues with metaphor presenting imagery. She laughed at herself, deep, unfathomable caves of ocean bare. Now, this imagery is quite obscure, further wrapping Neil in mystery, intriguing Grace into his character, almost putting him on a pedestal in comparison to Murray, which foreshadows Neil and Grace's future relationship, as Neil seems more entertaining than Murray and less uncomplicated. In the next line, he is described as melancholy, which alludes to his depression and future almost alcoholism present within the text, as it foreshadows his death caused by his depression, which can be assumed is due to his concealment of passions. This line becomes even more powerful, followed by the end of the paragraph saying, because women always have got something, haven't they, to keep them going. Now this is where Mr. Travis questions Grace as if to assess whether she has something that drives her. Now obviously she does have something to drive her, but right now she's not expressing it with Murray, which again alludes to her passions later then being revealed and followed, as this text primarily foreshadows to the future events while further characterizing Grace's thoughts and feelings throughout the story.